What is up, guys? I'm Thomas Mahler with Team Mahler Sports, and today I'm bringing you a video about whether I believe high school athletes should be allowed to go pro straight out of high school. So I want to preface this with, this is just a shorter version of my paper that I wrote on this topic, and I want it to be a little bit more visually and auditorily pleasant for everyone listening. So let's get right into it. So just a little bit of history on the back of this. So in the 20th century, mainly in the 1960s and then all the way up till the early 2000s, high schoolers getting drafted into the pros, I'm mainly talking about the NBA and NFL here, MLB as well, was a regularity. It just happened a lot. But due to past rule changes more recently, the MLB is now the only league to allow high schoolers to go pro. And there are arguments to both sides whether this is good or bad. Most of it for the side for the rules, saying that these players aren't ready to go pro. They're not mentally and emotionally prepared to be professionals. And the wrong decision could ruin their chances forever and they could never make it like they want to. And admittedly, these players aren't usually. A lot of them aren't ready for something like that. And players who succeed on this path are a rarity. However, I think there are more reasons that they should be permitted to go pro, and they outweigh the cons of doing so. I have done a significant amount of research on this topic. I've read up on a lot of people's stories who've taken the prep to pro path, that being high school straight to professionals. And one that really stood out for me was the Spencer Haywood story. So, Spencer Haywood was a basketball player in the midst of the civil rights movement at around 1965 in the era of Martin Luther King Jr. And he was a witness to all this racial discrimination. And he said in interviews and everything like that it was an inspiration to him. And he wanted to make a difference in the platform that he could. So he was a star in college basketball, got signed to the ABA, American Basketball Association, before the ABA-NBA merger. And after being a star there as well, he signed into the NBA 3 years after graduating from high school. Now, at the time, there was a 4-year standard where you had to be out of high school for 4 years before signing to the NBA. And eventually this led to a lawsuit, took it all the way to the Supreme Court where they ruled 7-2 against the 4-year standard, completely abolishing it, not even lowering it, so meaning that high schoolers could go to the NBA straight out. That ruling in the 60s opened doors for a lot of players throughout the 20th century, but it really hit its peak importance and effectiveness in 1995 when Kevin Garnett decided that he was going to go pro. And no one had done it in 2 decades. It was kind of unheard of at that point, despite it being allowed. He was dominant in high school, and he carried that and transformed it into a Hall of Fame NBA career. His story and his success are now an inspiration and a cornerstone for the argument of anyone who thinks that the prep to pro path is viable. When people are arguing this point, Kevin Garnett is the prime character to bring up because it was so unprecedented at the time when he made his decision, and he was still so successful. One of the best players of all time to do something like that is just massive. So, as I said, he was an inspiration to many others. So, a lot followed his path, and not quite were also successful, right? So you ask players like Jonathan Bender or Taj McDavid how their prep to pro path went. You don't know who they are, right? Point proven. It just didn't work for everybody. Not all of them had the same talent level. Not all of them had the same physical makeup, anything like that. Just different people. Now, Taj McDavid and Jonathan Bender specifically were massively scouted high schoolers. They were known nationwide, and they had really bright basketball features that never really panned out. As a counter-argument to the same story, Jonathan Bender went to the NBA and never reached levels that he wished he could have, never reached his full potential in that realm, but he did end up becoming a very successful entrepreneur, and that success he attributed to the experience and the business savvy that he learned from being in the NBA. So the argument on that front is that him going straight out of high school, he didn't waste time in college, he didn't waste time learning anything he didn't need, when all the experience he needed he got from the NBA. In the 1996 NBA draft, there was a new wave of high school draftees, and the three that were drafted that year, I think, are very indicative of the three options that could pan out career-wise when taking this path. So, firstly, of course, Kobe Bryant. I'm sure you know his name. Hall of Famer, future Hall of Famer. Great player, Black Mamba. You know him. Jermaine O'Neal, maybe less household name-wise, played 15 good seasons in the NBA, was a valuable role player, contributed on a lot of rosters. And back to our man, Taj McDavid, you know his name, but only because I just told you, was not very successful, and he has pretty much fallen off the face of the earth, at least basketball-wise, since he led what was looking to be a promising career. And now it's time for the fun fact of the day. So, I've told you about Kobe Bryant. I've told you about Jonathan Bender. Are they on the same level? I don't know. Let's compare stats. So, Kobe Bryant averaged 25 points a game. And he won 5 championships. Which is the same amount of points that Jonathan Bender scored per game. Fun fact of the day. Of course, with all players that went this way, college is debatable whether it would have helped or hurt them. If Kobe Bryant had gone to college, maybe he's not just in the conversation for the greatest of all time, he is undoubtedly the greatest of all time. And while that would have been hard to do, it's possible. Jermaine O'Neal, maybe instead of a valuable role player, he's a superstar coming out of college. Who's to say? And Taj McDavid, despite being long forgotten, if he had gone to college, maybe you knew who Taj McDavid is now. Maybe Taj McDavid was an all-star. Probably not, but maybe. After taking everything into account, I personally think it would be best if the Prep to Pro circuit was once again open for all sports. It allows elite players to make money faster, lessens injury risk in college, and allows more time to develop as a professional. And I know you can develop in college as a player, but you just don't have the same amount of time when you're spending time in class, whereas in the NBA and the NFL, you could be practicing with the best players in the world in their sport, in their field. And I think that is invaluable compared to what you would learn in college that won't really contribute to the career that you're after. The most important aspect I took into account when making my decision was morality. So, you're 18 years old, you're graduating from high school, as I'm about to do. You're allowed to vote, serve in the military, get married if you're lucky enough or unfortunate enough, depending on who you ask. But yet you're not allowed to make money playing the sport that you love, doing what you love, even though you're good enough to do it from where you stand. I just think that that's a little unfair, and that is not anyone else's decision to make other than yourself. Millions of kids grow up wanting to be a professional athlete. I know I did, and unfortunately my career was cut short when I was diagnosed with a severe lack of talent, but not everyone has that. And I know where I stand now, the importance of a good education. I'm attending college as soon as possible, but I also have to acknowledge that college isn't necessary for everyone or beneficial for everyone. If being the next Kobe Bryant, or being the next Kevin Garnett, or even more recently being the next LeBron James, if that comes at the cost of an irrelevant college education, then I say so be it. Before I wrap it up, I just want to reaffirm that this path isn't going to be for everyone. In fact, I personally believe that going to college before going pro is a safer and smarter way to do it. It's just more secure. You have a future afterwards, a fallback plan. But it's not my decision. It's not the league's decisions. It's not anyone's choice except for the talented young athletes themselves. And if they make that choice and it backfires, they will handle the consequences as an adult. And if they succeed, they will reap the rewards of their hard work and everything that they've dedicated their life to, and they should be given the choice to do that. I'm Thomas Mahler with Team Mahler Sports. Thank you for watching. Signing off.